Hi, this is Brandon Moon. I want to welcome you to Fly Tying Night tonight. Tonight we're going to be tying up a pretty cool little pattern, kind of a spin-off of a woolly bugger, but we call this the twist jig bugger. Okay, so the body style is going to be nice full body, add a little bit of color. It's on a jig hook, which is nice, and it's going to have a lot of movement and action to it, so it works really well. Being on a jig hook, you can tie this and fish it with a Euro rig, tight line nymphing, whatever you want to call it. So it works perfect for that. You can tie it in a variety of different colors and sizes as well. So before we get started, I want to thank everyone again and invite you to make sure and like the video and leave us a comment. Also make sure you hit subscribe so that you are able to get notification of new videos as they come up. So with that, we're going to get started tonight. For this one, our favorite size is a size 8. Okay, so we're going to use the Moonlit ML056 in the size 8 jig hook. Okay, for our bead on this one, we're going to tie it on the Apple Pell Olive in the 4.0 millimeter. We want this fly to get down and have the weight. So you can tie this in a variety of different colors, changing up the bead to the color of the hackle. You know, there's a lot of different ways to change this up and make it quite unique and different. So tonight we're going to be tying it in an olive because this is a real popular color in our water system here. So we'll go ahead and get started. And I'm just going to put my hook in the vise. Make sure I get it nice and straight. Now I'm just going to start my thread base. I'm using Floral Yellow 12/0 classic wax. I'm using the smaller diameter. I could get away with a larger one, but I always just use the really small thread. So we'll just give a nice good thread wrap here, thread base. I'm going to go just past the bend of the hook when I do this. This is just going to give me a little bit of length on that body. So for the tail on this, we're using Chickaboo pelt by Whiting. Okay, this is a olive dyed green. This is their hen rooster. It is the rooster grizzly dyed olive Chickaboo. Okay, so for the size 8, I want about 4 of these Chickaboo feathers here at the top of this. So I'm going to pull those out, and then I'm going to make sure they're the tips are kind of lined up a little bit. Okay, this Chickaboo is a lot like Marabou. It's going to give a nice good flow. You see how I've got a lot of movement in that tail. So I'm going to measure this so that it's roughly about the length of the hook shank, maybe just a tear longer. I definitely don't want it shorter because this is going to give a lot of the movement to my fly. I'm going to take and wrap that in front, secure it down, wrap it behind, about 2 wraps, secure it in front again. Now I want to make sure that bead's up in the front. I'm going to take and trim that off just behind. This is going to help add a little bit of bulk to this body. Okay, I'm not going to do too much. I'm just going to kind of secure that down. I can pull it rearward as I'm going backwards back to the back side and push all those fibers. If I have any extras, they're going to be flowing out with that tail. Okay. For this, I use a Polar Chenille medium in black. Okay, so I'm just going to take a small strip of that. I always tie this in so these fibers are facing the back side and rearward. So I'm just going to go ahead and secure that down. Now I'm going to go back to that chickaboo pelt. Okay, up here's the chickaboo, and down here is up here's our chickaboo. Down here is going to be our like hen feathers for our soft hackles. So I'm going to take a good sized feather out of here, and I like this chickaboo better than I like the Brahma because the Brahma is short and this is a longer feather. So I'm just going to take and create a tie-in point and palmer those feathers down so you can see my tie-in point right there. Now I'm just going to take and tie that in. Now we're just going to go forward. I'm going to give myself roughly about a bead length behind, maybe a little less. Now if I have gator grips from Loon, I can use the gator grips. That's these right here. But I'm going to do it without the gator grips so I can show you that you don't need that for this. And I'm just going to twist these together. Okay. And you can see how those are twisted together. I want to make sure and kind of pull those down. If I can use the dubbing brush to kind of comb through that, or I can just kind of use my fingers. Now I want to wrap this. But as I'm wrapping this, I want to make sure I'm wrapping on top of each other, basically one right in front of the other, pushing materials from the previous wrap rearward. And this is going to give this a palmered like effect. You can see I'm just kind of wrapping right in front, pulling all those fibers rearward with each wrap. I'm going to go to where I'm just going to give myself that little bit of space behind the bead. We'll tie that off or secure it down. Then to tie it off, I'm just going to kind of pull it back so I can kind of clean that area up just a little bit. Now I'm just going to take and clean off and trim that out. Okay. So now I'm going to pull it back. I'm going to really palmer that back, going back over it just a little bit. You can see how that just really kind of pushes those fibers rearward and palmered back over that fly. Okay, I'm going to add some Semperfli Crystal Flash in here. Okay, for this one I like the yellow. I like a little bit of flash in here. Kind of helps get that fish's attention. You can use rubber legs if you want as well. So you can see I have just a nice small amount. I don't know, there's like 6 fibers in there, maybe 6 to 8 fibers. So I'm going to take these, I'm going to tie this in on the side. I'm going to push the tips of those back here to about where the bend of the hook would be. And I'm just going to tie that in, going vertical off of that. So I'll just do that with 2 or 3 nice securing wraps, one in front that just locks everything in. Okay. Another way I could do this is I could take half of them, tie them in, then double it over and use it that way, and then trim off. So we can now tie in this side here, measure that out roughly to about the bend of that hook. Now I'm just going to secure that down. Pull that tight. Drop those. Let me get them back here now. I'll show you how I can do the other technique. So I'm going to measure that out. Okay. Go in loose so I can secure that down. Now I'm just going to take and pull those back and push them back in there. Now I can take my scissors and just trim those out. Okay, now I've got that in there. Make sure it's nice and pushed back there. Again, this just adds a little bit of flash to this fly, kind of catches the fish's attention. So there's a couple different ways you can finish this off. I'll show you this method first, and then I will tie up another bug that's ready and show you the other method. Okay, so for this one, we're just going to take another feather. If you have just a regular hen saddle, you can use it off of that, or you can use the whole patch from this. And I'm just going to take, like I did before, and I'm going to create a tie-in point, just like that. We're going to tie this in. You can see I've pulled and palmered everything down. I'm going to make sure I tie shiny side up. I've got that tied in. I'm going to pull it back, lock it in, and trim this piece off. Okay, I'm going to set my thread off to the side just so it's out of the way. Now I want to palmer this as I wrap it. Okay, so I'm just going to keep wrapping this and palmering it at the same time. Whatever you do, don't do what I just did and pull your hackle out. So then you got to tie it in again. Make sure you secure it in this time now that I screwed it up the first time. Now trim that out, set it off to the side again. Okay, now like I said, I'm just going to palmer this. I use both sides of the hackle, and like I do on my traditional soft hackles that I tie, just to get that fullness. I want this to be a really full collar. You can see it's kind of all over the place a little bit. But I'm just going to wrap that until I'm up, kind of up into this bead. Not all the way, but I want it nice and snug up against that bead. Now I'm just going to take and secure, well, didn't quite secure it. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to secure that down with 2 wraps. Now I'm going to pull all of those fibers rearward and just lock that in nice and good. Now I can take and trim out that feather. Okay, I'm going to keep pulling that back. See a few of those stragglers in there. I'm just going to trim them up. Now I'm just going to create a little hot spot in my collar. That's why I'm using the fluoro yellow thread. I want a little bit of a hot spot here. And that's just going to give that just a nice little hot spot collar there. Now we'll just do a 3-turn whip. 1, 2, 3. Since I used the Loon whip finish tool, I'll just snip that off. Okay, there you go. Now you've got that done. I like to take some UV resin. I use the Solar Res. I like the thin, hard, or medium for this. So I'm going to put, this is a size 4mm bead, so it's a pretty healthy dose. So I'm going to put a pretty healthy dose on there. I'm going to make sure and smooth it out with my bodkin here. This is going to help secure my bead from getting chipped and make sure that knot is nice and good, isn't going to come unraveled, give it a little more durability to this fly. So now that I'm done with that, I'll take my UV gun and just cure that up real quick. This is going to be a nice bright collar. Along with that flash is going to give this a lot of action, movement, and visibility. So, alright, as you can see, we're at that point now to finish this collar off. I've done the body, put the crystal flash in there for the sides, gills, whatever you want to call them. Okay, for finishing this one off, I'm going to do a collar of pine squirrel. Okay, so I've taken this pine squirrel strip here and I put it in this stone faux clip because you can see it holds in that hide there and allows me to take my Swiss CDC tool. If I don't have this and I've got the stone faux, I can take the other stone faux, and I'm going to take and slide that over just like that. Okay, so there I've got that just like that. I took and slid that over. Now it's on there. I don't need a whole lot to make this collar, so now I'm just going to take and trim this out along that hide. Okay, I want to cut it along the hide as close as possible. Okay, so there I've got that. I want to even those tips up just a little bit. So I'm just going to release a little bit of pressure so I can move those. Now they're even. Okay, now on to the next step. Now we're going to create a little dubbing loop here. Okay, so I'm going to loop that down, a couple wraps, locking all this in place. Now I'm just going to set that off to the side. I'm going to take my CDC tool here, my Swiss CDC tool. I'm going to lock that in down here on the bottom. I'm going to take some Wonder Wax. I'm going to wax this top part of that thread up. This is going to help lock in these pine squirrel fibers. So I'm pulling backward with my index finger here. I'm going to hold tension with my middle finger there. I'm going to slide that in, let it kind of go over the top, let go. Now I release that clamp. Then I'm just going to spin that. I'm just going to let that spin that pine squirrel. Okay, now that I've got it like that, I'm just going to take my little dubbing brush here, just kind of get any of those fibers kind of pulled out. Now I can take and wrap this. I'll use my rotary feature to get it started, and then I'm going to palmer that backwards. Now I'll just secure that down. I mean definitely the hackle collar is definitely faster. This one looks a little fuller. I think I really like the action on this collar a little bit more. It's not quite as long, but it definitely gives a good flow to this fly. I've caught a lot of fish doing it both ways, so this is really just a personal preference. Now I'll just take and whip finish. 3 turns is my standard go-to. Again, this thread gives us that hot spot collar, nice and good, palmered over, a lot of action in this fly. Now again, I'm just going to take the UV resin, put it on there, take my bodkin that I have. I buy a cheap bodkin for this application, specifically of just doing resin, so I make sure I'm not ruining one of my nice ones, and if I'm doing super glue. Okay, now we'll just cure that up. And there you have our 2 variations to tying up this twist jig bugger. We look forward to seeing what you guys tie up, fish you catch with this bug. Make sure you hit the like button, make sure you comment, like and subscribe to the channel so you get future notifications. So just a few different things. You can again change this up, changing the bead color. You can change the polar chenille, medium polar chenille you're using. You can change up the color of hackle you're using to black, brown, purple, olive, tan, like any color you want. You can do a combination of different colors. I could tie this up with a black body and mixed with a fluorescent orange polar chenille. I can give me the Halloween bugger with our fluorescent orange bead or black bead, so there's a lot of different possibilities. So make sure you tie some of these up. We look forward to hearing what you have to say.